Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining this edition of DCKAP eSessions. My name's Catherine. I work with the marketing team as the partner manager at DCKAP, and I'll be hosting this great session we have planned for you today. First, a big thank you to our sponsors for today's eSession with our partners, WebScale and Shipper HQ, and we'd like to thank them for their continued support. We hold these DCKAP eSessions events monthly with strategies in e-commerce featuring our clients' digital journeys and many of our partners' valuable insights. And you can always see our latest events at dckap.com/events. And when you do have a moment, there's a poll that would have popped up, and we would love any feedback you would have, all of which helps us with bettering these events. And we would like this to be interactive, so feel free to ask any questions whenever you have any. You can add any questions in the Q&A tab or questions and comments in the chat whenever you have them, and we'll make sure to keep track of them. So today we'll be hearing from Ryan Van Hoozer from Marysville Marine and seeing his great presentation on the digital transformation journey that they experienced and the success story that DCKAP was fortunate enough to work with them on. We'll also be featuring a panel of our partners and guests afterwards for a continued discussion with Marysville on various points with the process of migration and some further insight with our guests from Shipper HQ and WebScale into understanding more on hosting and other important processes of e-commerce, as well as sharing insight on how to digitally transform in new ways. And we will also make sure to have time for Q&A afterwards. And if any questions have not already been answered, we will ensure that they are by the end. And additionally, we will also have a post-event networking session, and we will have a link to that on the slide, and it will be pasted in the chat as well. So with that, I'd like to start by introducing Ryan, who is the Vice President of Operations of Marysville Marine, a wholesale and e-commerce supplier of boating parts and accessories. For over 17 years, Ryan has led the marketing and e-commerce efforts for Marysville Marine, overseeing the growth and vision for both Marysville Marine and its retail counterpart, Marine Parts Source. Ryan also oversees the purchasing, inventory, and product management for the company, ensuring that all parts tie together seamlessly. Ryan, thank you so much for being here and joining us today. And we'd love for you to come on board and start your presentation.
Okay, great. Thank you, Catherine. I appreciate it. And I appreciate DCKAP inviting me to speak today with everybody. I hope that you find this valuable. I'm just going to get my screen up and hope everybody can see it now. So, all right. So as I was saying, we did recently complete our transformation with DCKAP's help this year, migrating from our old website platform on Magento 1 to our new platform. And I just wanted to talk today and kind of go through what that journey was like for us, to give you a little bit of background on Marysville Marine. We are a wholesale distributor of boating equipment. Not so much the type of equipment you might find in a sporting goods store. We don't sell life jackets and inflatables and that sort of thing. We do sell the parts and accessories that really make the boat operate. Everything from, you know, the boat, the engine parts, the steering components, plumbing, electrical pieces, that type of thing. Anything that makes the boat work is what we sell. We operate out of 5 distribution centers across the United States. We've been in business since 1973, and we've been selling online since 2002, which for the marine industry was pretty advanced at the time. It was a pretty novel concept to even just expose our live inventory to our customers, to have product images and descriptions at the time. So kind of early to that scene. And then we also, at the same time, added our e-commerce portion of the business called Marine Parts Source. And we operate in the back end, behind the scenes, with an ERP system called Profit 21. It's made by a company called Epicor. If you're a wholesale distributor, it's probably a piece of software that you're familiar with or have at least heard about. As I mentioned, in addition to the distribution side of our business, the wholesale side, we do have an e-commerce direct-to-consumer business called Marine Parts Source, where we target the do-it-yourselfers, the people that are going to take repairs and maintenance into their own hands. This has become a pretty significant portion of our business over the years. We also reach out to those customers through our own eBay store as well. We've been doing that for a number of years as well. So we're operating those 2 sites as well as the eBay store out of 5 different locations across the country. And so last year during the summer, we started to really contemplate the idea of maybe we need to migrate platforms from where we were. We had been on Magento version 1 for about 5 years, and it had been good for us. It was a little bit of a rocky transition initially, but once we got onto the platform and kind of got things figured out, it had been a really good growth vehicle for us. So, you know, after 5 years, we started to take a look at, you know, where we were and what were the next steps. And one of the big motivators on why we thought we needed to maybe migrate platforms was because Magento did announce last year end of life for Magento version 1. They announced that it would be in June 2020 of this year. And so that was something that we really took into strong consideration about, you know, how is that going to affect us? We started to look at, can we operate past end of life on Magento 1? And we determined pretty quickly that it was something we didn't want to do for security purposes. Just we didn't want to be out of support and on our own to fend off any kind of attacks. We wanted to make sure that we were within PCI compliance. So this was the big main reason why we made that change, and or we decided to make that change. And so we started to look at what our options were after that. Some of the other big reasons that we wanted to make that migration, one was to improve the speed and performance of the sites. Magento 1 was a pretty complex program with a lot of bells and whistles, but one thing it was not known for was its performance, particularly when you add a bunch of additional extensions onto it to get it to where you want it to perform. So one of the things we really wanted to target as if we were going to make this move was to make our sites more user-friendly, have a better speed and performance for our customers. Another big piece of this puzzle that we wanted to attack with this migration was to improve the B2B capabilities of our site. As I mentioned, back in 2002, when we first started to sell online, just showing inventory and having a way to place orders for our wholesale customers was a pretty big deal for the boating industry. And, you know, that was something that kind of set us apart. But 18 years later, I think that customers' expectations have changed dramatically. You know, now the B2B customer really has an expectation level that the shopping experience for them is just as seamless as if they were shopping in a B2C environment, shopping on Amazon or something of that nature. They want all of the performance and features that they're used to, but in addition, they want some features that are specific to that B2B experience, such as being able to manage multiple users on their account, being able to see their account balance, see past invoices and issue returns and that sort of thing. So we wanted to dive deeper into those capabilities and see what we could do to expand that experience for our B2B customers. And then another thing that we really wanted to try and improve upon with this transformation was better integration with our ERP system, Profit 21. We had some basic integration with our Magento 1 sites. Orders were importing into that ERP. We were able to do some basic customer updates and inventory updates, but we really wanted to tighten that integration up and automate a lot more of the transfer of data that's going back and forth between the two systems. So that was a major point for us to address as we got into this project. Just because we were on version 1 of Magento didn't necessarily mean we were going to immediately jump to Magento 2. We wanted to take a look at our options. Magento 2 is a completely new platform from version 1. It's not just a simple upgrade. They basically started from scratch and rebuilt the whole platform. So it is a true migration. So with that in mind, we did decide to look at different possibilities for what would be the best fit for us. We looked at Shopify Plus, BigCommerce. We looked at OroCommerce, which is a e-commerce platform that is specifically designed and targeted more to the wholesale distributor. And of course, we looked at Magento version 2 as well. And we looked at some other pieces of software too. Ultimately, we did come down to deciding to go with Magento. And there were some specific reasons why it stood out and was a better fit for us. One of the main reasons was it just comes with a lot of features compared to some of the other options that are out there. One of the things, as I mentioned before, that we wanted to try and avoid is a lot of additional extensions, because they really weigh down your platform. They can really affect the performance negatively. So finding a piece of software that had as many of the features that we were looking for out of the box was important, because we felt like it was going to perform better and more seamlessly than if we had to put a bunch of extensions together to make it to where we wanted it to be. So that was important. We also, it was critical that the piece of software that we went with could support multiple sites running off of the one installation, since we did have both MarysvilleMarine.com and MarinePartsSource.com. And it was important that we had support for multi-location or multi-source, basically that it could handle understanding that we had 5 locations of inventory. We're shipping from different areas depending on where the customer is. You may want to use a different location for the source of the order. You know, that was something that we just wanted to make sure that that software could support. Another big selling point for Magento, and we went with the Commerce Cloud version of Magento. The reason why is because the cloud version offers a lot of B2B features. They have a whole set of B2B features and tools that the regular version of Magento and then other e-commerce platforms just did not have. And there's a lot of work being done in this space as far as BigCommerce, Shopify, they're all Salesforce. They're all aiming towards trying to add this type of functionality to their platforms. At the time that we were looking at it a year ago, Magento just seemed like they were a step ahead. I haven't looked to see what the comparison is like today, but certainly a year ago, Magento seemed like they were further down the road with B2B features than some of the other platforms that were out there. And then I'm not going to lie, having an easy transition between the two systems was important. Even though it is completely rebuilt from scratch, Magento 2 is, a lot of the language and organization of data that is used is the same as what was on Magento 1. So we felt like there was going to be a little bit less of a learning curve with going with that platform versus if we jumped completely to something new. And then finally, what was really important for me was making sure that there was a strong developer community around the software. You know, e-commerce environment's always changing. The expectations of the customers are always changing. And it seems like it's just accelerating the need for change every year. It seems like there's just so much more to know and keep up with. So we really wanted to make sure that we were partnering with a software package that there was a lot of investment in its growth, and that there was a developer community around it that was going to continue to thrive, so that we would have flexibility as we went into the future. You don't want to be stuck on a platform that's going nowhere, that's not adding new features as they develop, that's not paying attention to the direction that the industry is going. And so we felt like with Magento, there was a really strong support community around it, that we were going to have options as we go into the future. We're going to be able to find developers who could help to steer us in the right direction and add the functionality we need as we discover it. So then another one of the more critical pieces of the beginnings of this project is choosing a developer partner to help guide us through the migration. And there's a lot of different factors to consider when you're looking at a developer, who to pick. And I've tried to list all of those different factors here. I hope that I've covered them all. First of all, you definitely want to find somebody who can communicate effectively. And second, it's really important that they can communicate really well. And third, it's just so important that they have really good communication skills. And I don't know if I mentioned this, but fourth, did I mention communication? I think that I'm a little bit traumatized from previous projects when we've migrated before. We had developer partners who just weren't responsive, or when they did respond, it was really delayed, or it was a very vague response, and it took several interactions back and forth to really get clear answers from them. It's just so important to find a partner that you can depend upon to respond quickly, to be concise and clear and honest. And that's not always the easiest thing to find. And even when you're in the initial stages of interviewing a developer, it's tough to know what you're really going to get when you start the project, because everybody's on their best behavior when they're first being interviewed for the job, right? So everybody is responsive and doing all the right things, crossing the T's and dotting the I's, and you really don't know who you're working with until you sign on those papers and you start the project. But there are some clues and tips I think you can pick up on through that initial interview process that I think helps to give you an indication of what to expect later. Now, obviously, communication is not the only thing, though it is the most important thing for me. When we were choosing the developer, there were other factors as well. And most of those centered around the fact that we wanted to make sure that the partner we chose was going to be capable of pulling off the project. We know that we offer a lot of complexity to what we were needing. And so it was important that we had someone who's really capable and who had experience with those types of complex projects before. So one of the first things that we did was we reached out to Magento directly and got their recommendations, and we told them what we were needing, as far as the multi-site, multi-locations, that we wanted to integrate with Profit 21, and they gave us a short list of developers that they were familiar with and comfortable recommending for that type of project. All of them were Magento certified, and that was really the first checkbox that had to be checked off, was that the developer had all of the credentials and was familiar with the software. And then second, we wanted to make sure that they were capable of the integration with Profit 21. Were they familiar with that piece of software? Did they have the talent on staff to be able to understand it and integrate it with Magento? And in previous projects, we've had to hire multiple developers, one for handling the integration part and then another to handle the front-end web development. And that can get messy if you've got 2 and 3 developers working on the same project. When something doesn't work, everybody's first response is to say, oh, it must be the other person's code that's creating the issue. So it's really an appealing idea for us to find a partner who could do everything from beginning to end, who understood the entire project, both the back end and the front end parts of it, and how they work together. That's not an easy thing to find either. Another piece that we wanted to look for was, has that developer had experience with similar types of customers as us? Other wholesale distributors doing B2B web interfaces? Have they dealt with doing multiple sites? Have they dealt with doing multiple sources of inventory? Have they dealt with Profit 21 before? Have they dealt with Magento before? Could we see similar types of projects in their history to us? So that was something that we looked for. And then, of course, you can't go on Amazon and just read customer reviews of your developer, but there are sites out there like Clutch where you can review coders and developers and programmers. And so we definitely checked those. And of course, with everybody that we were interviewing, we asked for references and we interviewed those customers to see what their experience was like, to see if it was similar to ours and if they had any major issues in working with those developers. Now, obviously, because I'm speaking today, you guys know that I did choose DCKAP as our partner for this project. And they really just checked all of those boxes that we were talking about. They came in with multiple Magento certifications. They were familiar with Profit 21, had done that type of integration with Magento before. They had done similar projects as to what we were asking for previously, had similar types of customers to us, and the reviews and the testimonials that we were able to find about DCKAP were all really positive. But more than anything else, their communication through that initial phase of investigation of different developers and everything was just top notch. They really stood out in the fact that they provided feedback quickly. They were very responsive to our questions. They were clear about what they could do, what limitations there might be for what we were looking for. So I just can't say enough about all of that. Really was a good hint to how they were going to operate during the project. They really had great communication. And I'm happy to say that as we've gotten into the project and now gone through to completion with launch, that has held true throughout the entire process. It did really come down to DCKAP and one other company who also had high grades on all of these issues. I mean, they also had certifications and could do the integration, had similar customers. But one thing that really, beyond all of this, that made DCKAP stand out for us was this piece of software called CLORAS, which I do feel is a game-changing piece of middleware that we're using to connect Magento with Profit 21. Now, a lot of times when you're doing integrations between two systems, it's just a couple of APIs, it's a bunch of code, and if you're like me, maybe you're just a layman and you wouldn't understand what all that code means. But what the great thing about CLORAS is it's a graphic interface that you log in and you can very easily see how the two systems connect together. You can see that this field from P21 maps over to this field in Magento, and you can see the schedule for how often it's updating, and you can see the direction. Does it update just from Profit 21 to Magento, or vice versa, or do they update each other? And it's all customizable. So I mean, it's a really fluid piece of software with infinite number of integrations that you can create between two systems. And it's not just for those two pieces of software either. It can integrate with other e-commerce platforms. It can integrate with other ERP systems. I think it can integrate with Salesforce and HubSpot and other marketing type of systems as well. So there's a lot of functionality and ability with this software. And for us, it really stood out as a powerful piece to this project and was one of the big reasons why we decided to choose DCKAP as our partner. Another great thing about CLORAS, it's got detailed logging. So it's very easy to see if something didn't work right, or if you see that an update didn't happen when you expected it, you can go into those logs and pretty quickly find what was the issue. Did you have some messy data? That's usually the case, is you had bad data that didn't cause it to not update. And so you can find that and troubleshoot it pretty easily. So definitely, if anybody was coming to me and was trying to go through this same type of project, this is something I'd definitely recommend they take a strong look at. So beyond the developer being good at communication, it's really important for us that we were good communicators as well, particularly in the portion of the project when you're defining the project scope. You've chosen your platform, you've chosen the developer you're going to work with. Now you've got to really explain to them everything that you're looking for in the project. And a good developer partner will guide you. They'll ask the right questions as they know them to be to try and step you through the process. But they're not going to know the nuances and the idiosyncrasies of your business. And it's really the responsibility of the customer to communicate those to the developer. And we try to over communicate our needs. I mean, just get really detailed. You can't communicate too much when it comes to this portion of the project. We tried to highlight the main priorities that were the most important to us, like I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, things like the performance, the ERP integration working correctly, the enhanced B2B functionality that we were looking for. And, so they knew that those were the things we were going to be really measuring them on. But we also got really specific on things like design. We've got in-house designers, so we were able to put together mock-ups and hand them over to DCKAP, and we were very explicit about how we wanted the homepage and the product pages and the category pages to look, and they were able to match them almost exactly. DCKAP was, so that was terrific. And then for performance, we got very specific about the metrics we were looking for, what kind of page load times we were wanting. I mean, we put numbers to this to give detailed expectations for them, and then also with functionality, step-by-step processes of this is how we want the user experience to go, and we try not to miss or assume that DCKAP's going to know any piece of this. Just really get specific on it. And that scope of work document's got to be very detailed. And it's hard to think of everything. I would say that you're not going to. I know I didn't. But you try your best to cover all your bases, and again, just be very detailed about it when you sign off on it, because later in the project, you want to avoid any surprises as much as possible. And then one of the other things once you're defining the scope is you're going to be picking out what kind of integrations you're going to need to go along with the main web platform. I don't think there's a e-commerce site out there that can get by just out of the box. Most everybody's going to need some sort of third-party integration, even if it's just for shipping and payment. But what you want to try and avoid is, adding too many of those. I know there's a lot of really attractive integrations and extensions that are out there, and you think, oh, that'd be neat to add to my site. But you start loading the site up with a bunch of those, and the next thing you know, it's Frankenstein's website, where you've got all these different pieces cobbled together to try and create the site that you want. But it ends up turning out to be a monster, and then your customers are charging after you with torches and pitchforks, and we want to avoid that. So you don't want to have Frankenstein's website. You want to be very selective about the integrations that you're going to choose. Here are some of the main third-party integrations we're using. We use Shipper HQ for a lot of our shipping functionality. This is new to us, and it's really been eye-opening, the amount of functionality and options and how much we can enhance the user experience with that tool. We're using PayPal and Payflow Pro for our payment integration. We've been using Payflow Pro for many, many years. MailChimp is our email marketing tool, and then Trustpilot we use for our service and product ratings. Then I've included a couple of developers of extensions down here, Amnesty and MageFan. These are Magento extension developers that are really top-notch. They've developed a lot of different extensions for Magento. Almost all of them are highly rated. And, that's the type of thing that you really want to look for with an extension developer, just like you would with a regular project developer. Do they have high ratings? Do they have good customer response? You can look at the Q&A on a lot of these extensions pages to see, are they responding to the customer questions? Are there regular updates of the extension? Is it live, or has it been dormant for many months or years? You really want to try and only use extensions that are being made by reputable, certified developers like Amnesty and MageFan. Another big piece of this project for us was, it's a lesson I have to learn every time we get into a big project like this, and I try to be mindful of changing the way operations happen as a result of changes with the website. What I mean by that is that the website touches all aspects of the business, whether it be sales, customer service, marketing, shipping, receiving, purchasing, accounting. The things that you do and the choices you make with the website, particularly when you're doing a big migration like this, it has ripple effects across the entire company. So you change some piece of data, you change a process, you really need to test that change through to completion. It's not enough to just say, okay, we're changing this one field or a piece of data on how orders are generated, and it comes over to the ERP, so yeah, it works. That's not enough. You really need to see, once it gets to the ERP, how does that order process? How does your pick ticket look when it goes to the warehouse? How does shipping have to deal with it? If you have to conduct a return on that order, what does that look like? Does the data affect any of those steps? Does it affect the daily or monthly accounting? Yeah, I would love to say that, I went into this project and our team thought of everything, but it's just not possible. But as you change these different pieces from what they may have been previously, you just really want to test that through to completion. One example would be like we have a field for the attribution of the sale of an order to a particular location. So let's say that we sold an item to a customer that's in Michigan, right? And we would want to attribute that sale to our Michigan location. But at the time that they purchased it, maybe there weren't any in stock in Michigan, so it actually came out of Florida or something of that nature. But that value that comes over to our system would be saying the sales attributed to Michigan. So we had a situation with our new sites where we neglected to inform DCKAP of how we wanted that data to come across, how we wanted those attribution logic to work. And so everything was basically getting attributed to our Michigan locations. They had a really good sales month in August. They looked great. But obviously that's not how we wanted to go. And it affected purchasing because now they're looking at the numbers and saying, well, we had this huge spike in sales in Michigan. Do we reorder based on that? It affected accounting. And so these are the things that just a small change for your web can make a big impact on the rest of the company. Some other operational changes that we made include, like, we added PayPal Express payments. That wasn't something we had offered before. We used PayFlow Pro for our credit card processing, but never accepted PayPal payments before. And, that created a situation where we had to adjust and add additional administrative tasks to be able to capture those funds and balance at the end of every day that we hadn't had to do previously. The process is different for those payments than it was for our regular credit card processing. So it required creating a new process internally. We also added the new B2B customer management functionality on the site so that our wholesale customers would be able to add multiple users and they can remove them and set permissions and so forth. And we realized quickly that that was something we were going to need to educate those customers about really one-on-one. Our customer base is not necessarily the most savvy of computer users. They're definitely excellent marine mechanics, but they're not always the best on a keyboard and screen. So a lot of times you're trying to educate that customer on how to use this new functionality and make their account really work the best way possible over the phone. So that was a challenge. We added regional delivery options. We had delivery options before, but we had never really offered them through the site. So that's a new aspect. And we had to make sure that we were prepared for how that order looks when it comes across from the site to our warehouses. Thanks to Shipper HQ, we're able to add estimated delivery dates at checkout for our customers, which is a great improvement in the experience, but it also sets an expectation level for our customers. And we accept back orders, so that kind of throws a wrinkle into that. And we had to make some adjustments to make sure that we weren't setting unreal expectations for our customers. We were able to improve the shipping rate estimates, again, thanks to Shipper HQ, the much more accurate estimates of shipping rates. We were also able to add a requisition or quick order form for our B2B customers, which is new because a lot of B2B customers, they already know what they want. They know the part numbers. They don't need to do any kind of shopping experience where they're browsing around or clicking through categories. They can just open up a form, put in their part numbers and quantities and hit submit and be done. And so we wanted to give them that kind of functionality. And then, just more integration with the ERP, again, is one of our main goals with the project. So more tight integration of customer data, order data, product data. And so when you're pushing all that data around, you have to be really careful that it's correct and it's going in the right fields, because if you do it incorrectly, it could, again, have that ripple effect that affects beyond just the website. I'll give another example of how an operational change can have some unintended consequences. So we were using Shipper HQ now and able to get more accurate rates, which is great, and able to provide estimated delivery times, which again, great. These are two things that improve the user experience. This is what we're going for. We want to continue to improve the user experience. The unintended consequence of this is that FedEx became a much more attractive option at checkout. The rates for FedEx ground were usually better than UPS ground for us. And also because of estimated delivery times, FedEx delivers on Saturdays. So particularly for orders that were later in the week, our customers are seeing estimated delivery with FedEx that's much quicker than UPS. These two things combined to make FedEx just a much more attractive option. Suddenly, after launch, we see this huge spike in the number of orders we're processing using FedEx as the shipping method. Previously, UPS had been our main shipping method that most customers choose. So this was new to us. Were our shipping departments prepared? No, not really. This was a surprise. In each warehouse, we've got areas designated for where we stage our UPS packages and where we stage FedEx packages. All of a sudden, the FedEx area isn't nearly as big enough as it needs to be. So we've got to do some quick thinking and rearrange how our staging areas are designed so that we have enough room for FedEx packages. Additionally, the processing of FedEx orders is a little bit more manual than UPS. It's a couple of extra steps. And again, so now you're slowing down the shipping department from what they were used to, where it was a much quicker processing for a lot of packages. Now there's a number of packages more that have that longer process. So again, we're in the busy part of our season in the summer, and that was a challenge. And then, even FedEx drivers were not prepared and were affected by this, because all of a sudden these drivers are showing up every day and picking up 3 times as many packages as they were previously. Do they have room on the truck? Those are the questions that we didn't know we were going to have to ask when we started this. All we wanted to do was just provide a better experience for our customers at checkout. Who knew that these types of ripples were going to happen? And again, that's why I say, you really try to the best of your ability to test that through to completion. What does it look like when, and anticipate what might happen when you make these changes. Some other big challenges that we've run into with this project, and I think every web development project has probably run into this first one, which is the changing timeline. I can't name a web project ever that finished on time. If you have ever been a part of one, then you should be the one giving this speech, not me. But it's something that we try to stick to as best we could. We started to put this project together last summer and fall, and we really were targeting April as our launch date. Because as you can imagine, the boating season is busiest during the summer. June, July, August are just peak times. We wanted to try and launch before we got to that season. And it just wasn't something we were able to pull off. I mean, it was going to be a tight window to begin with, but then the pandemic happens. And again, one of those things that in 2019, we couldn't have predicted. So that slowed down our operations. It slowed down the ability of DCKAP to work on the project, though I will give them kudos. They were able to recover quickly. There were lockdowns in India where a lot of their developers are. That slowed things down, but they were able to facilitate remote working for their developers and get the project moving forward very quickly from that. It wasn't too much of a speed bump. And again, for us as well, we had to navigate that during the April-May timeframe, and it slowed down the project some. So again, now we're having to do the launch during the busy season, because again, we have that deadline of Magento 1 end of life in June. And so I would have loved to have pushed this off to the winter when we were slower, but it just wasn't a reasonable thing to do. So we had to navigate launch when we were at our busiest time. When the most eyes are on us, when the most customers are coming to us. So any issue is just going to be amplified by 10 because of the amount of customers that we're dealing with during that time. Another issue that we're still grappling with, though I think it's going to get better, is how we handle order allocation through our multiple warehouses. Obviously, we want to ship in the most efficient way possible, but that can become a pretty complex algorithm, particularly with us, because we throw a lot of wacky stuff at DCKAP to try and make this work, including we allow ordering of out of stock items. We allow orders to be split into multiple shipments from multiple locations, just depending on where we have it in stock. So particularly on the B2B side, when a customer can build a cart that's 15, 20, 25 items long, that can become a really cumbersome algorithm to try and figure out, and it can slow down that checkout process. So we're working through that issue to see how can we improve and make that a more efficient allocation of the order. Another challenge for us is handling B2B customer pricing. Not every customer gets the same price on our B2B website. There are different levels, there are tiers. Certain customer segments may get a special price on certain brands, but then the standard price on other brands. So it's pretty complicated. It's really had us go back to the drawing board and say, are we doing this right? Maybe we should rethink our whole pricing structure and make it simpler. And I think that's probably an approach we're going to take in order to navigate this challenge. And then, as mentioned before, just the challenge of educating and engaging our B2B customer, helping them to understand how the new site works. I mean, it's a pretty intuitive and prototypical e-commerce experience for the most part, but that B2B part of it is different, and not all customers are going to pick up on it right away. So, taking the time to do that one-on-one education with them, and educating our sales force so that they can go out and work with the customer and help them to understand how it works is important as well. And then another big challenge, and I think this is probably a pretty common one for a lot of companies, is just dealing with messy data. And we've been in business for over 40 years, and we've got a lot of data that we've collected, whether it be product or customer data over the years, and maybe we haven't always put it in the right spot or been consistent with how it's been entered. And that can lead to issues, particularly when you're pushing it to the website, you're setting up operations to depend on certain values. It's really important to try and get it consistent. And, you've got a company of X amount of people. We've got 60 employees, and everybody is maybe doing something the way they see to do it, and can mean 60 different variations of how that data is entered. So standardizing and making your data consistent is a really important thing to ensure that you don't run into issues later. I read Amazon recently called it data hygiene, and I think that that's a really good term for it. You really want to try and clean it up and make it consistent as much as possible. And another one of the big things to address those challenges, and I mentioned it before, and I want to mention it again, is just the communication piece. Communicate, and then communicate some more with that developer, with your partners in the project. DCKAP was really great. They set up weekly communication calls with us every day, at the same day every week, the same time every week. We were on a call with DCKAP where they were able to go over what they had been working over for the previous week, what they had planned for the upcoming week, what they were going to be working on. Is an opportunity for them to ask questions, to share their screen and demonstrate different things to us, and work through any issues that were coming up. And there was a representative from Magento on those calls each week as well. So he was a resource for us to be able to ask technical questions and make sure that we were doing things to their standards and exercising best practices. We used a couple of communication tools as well throughout the project that were really valuable. Basecamp initially, and then once we got into the testing phase of the project, we used Trello, which if you haven't used, it's a really nifty tool for basically just managing multiple tickets, and you can move them around into different statuses. It's just a nice project management type of tool that we found very valuable. We're still continuing to use after launch as we address, things that we see come up or things that we want to implement. And then I know it's kind of an old technology, but screen captures were so valuable throughout the project, just to help in communicating what you're looking at, what you're wanting, and particularly in testing. You know, I'm with the philosophy that you get a lot of people involved in testing from all over the company, because, you know, again, the website is touching all kinds of jobs within the company. So get those people involved to check out the processes that affect them, and teaching them all how to do screen captures and make notes on those screen captures was really valuable, just to speed up communication, to help DCKAP understand what we were looking at. You know, it seems basic, but it was really important for us. And the final thing I'll just say with our project that was really important was to measure results. You know, you spend a lot of money on a platform migration. They spend a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of brain cells. And it's important that you're getting something for that. We didn't want it to just be a lateral move because Magento 1 was nearing end of life and we had to make a move. We wanted to get something out of this. So, you know, for me, conversion rate is like the ultimate metric that really tells you whether your new website is performing better or worse than the old one, because it's, no matter how big the audience is, it's telling you what that experience is like for the customer. Are they converting to an order, which is ultimately what you want to see, right? So I'm happy to report with our new sites, we've been launched about 5 or 6 weeks now. Conversion rate is up anywhere from 25 to 35%, depending on the day a week, which is really exciting. And another thing that we were measuring was the page load times. And, you know, that was one of our key priorities that we wanted to tackle with this project. And I'm happy to report that we've got page load times that were up to 50% faster than our old sites. Again, I think a lot of that has to do with getting rid of a lot of those extensions, having the native features of Magento to do what we're wanting it to do in terms of the user experience. And the bounce rate is lower by about 15% for our new sites, which is great. Bounce rate can be kind of a sticky metric to measure by. It can be misleading, but take it in context with some of these other things that we're seeing, and I think you can see it's a positive one. And then the average session time, again, taken on its own, it may not tell you much. I mean, if session times are up, that could mean that the customers are struggling to find what they want or do the whatever action they're trying to do. But in this case, when you compare it with also conversion rate, page load times, and that sort of thing, I believe that this is a positive metric for us, that the sessions are lasting about 50% longer than they were on the old sites. So all really good results. And, you know, we're excited about just how seamless this transition has been from our old sites to the new ones. And we're excited for the platform that we have and the partner that we have. We feel like there's a lot of opportunity to continue to grow. As anybody who's been through a web migration will know, it's never done. There's never a finish line. You're continually going to be revising and improving to try and meet whatever new customer expectations there are. So that's really all I have, and I appreciate all of you signing up and listening to the presentation. If you got any questions, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, or you can email me directly, rvanhoozer@marysvillemarine.com. I've enjoyed talking with you guys, and again, feel free to reach out to me. Be happy to discuss any of the questions that you have about the presentation. With that, I am going to let Kathy take it back over.
Thank you so much, Ryan. We do actually have a question from Hillary, and I'd love to ask that to you right now. She's asking, how did you prioritize your third-party integrations and resources?
Well, you know, that's a good question. That's a broad question. I mean, I could do another hour or so on that. So it just takes discussion amongst your core team about what's the most important thing to you. For us, you know, there's no compromising on the fact that we have multiple sites, that we had multiple warehouses. So that functionality had to come first. And then the basics of, checkout and making sure that, we meet the shipping is really important. And we've just learned that through experience. So making sure that we were quoting accurate rates, that we had the flexibility to do things like free shipping rules and to do restrictions to certain areas, to be able to offer like the delivery options that we offer to our B2B customers, store pickup, that sort of thing. So that whole shipping part became really important for us. And I just think that that's an important piece of any e-commerce platform. Shipping and payment are just going to be at the top two on your list, I would think. Beyond that, it's what do the customers expect? So it's just gonna depend on, what are they already used to, and what's gonna be the thing that gives you the most return on your investment. So what could help the customer experience the most? I think that's probably something that you'd want to look at when you're prioritizing which extensions to choose.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much for the great detailed answer.
Thanks.
And it was really great, your presentation, just hearing your thought process, going through all the options for the project. It could certainly be a daunting task for anyone, and hearing your insights on choosing a platform and choosing a developer, navigating the challenges and the great results. I think that could be really helpful to those looking to make a similar change. So thank you very much. We will be sharing all this great content post-event, and we'll be hosting the videos on demand on our events page as well. So be sure to check that out and share it across with anyone you think would be great insight for. And then also I'd like to once again say thank you to our sponsors, WebScale and Shipper HQ, for their support and contribution to the event. And we'd also just like to take a moment to mention that there are some great promotions available, with a 30-day free trial with DCKAP's product CLORAS, which Ryan spoke about, and with 3 months of M1 support from WebScale and a 30-day trial of Shipper HQ. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us for this month's event. And we have a great lineup for next month's event as well. So please watch out for that. And again, you can see all of our upcoming previously held sessions as well on our website at dckap.com/events. Have a great rest of the day, everyone.